Hello everybody and good afternoon. Isn't this a lovely sunny day? So today we are going to look at our last minute tips before your medical exam writing test next week, or in the next coming few days that you have. So today I've put together a checklist of some very common mistakes that I hope you will avoid when you are doing your test in the next couple of days. Okay, so let's go through and let me show you some of the most common mistakes that you must try hard to avoid. Okay, so first we're going to look at some common mistakes which are grammatical mistakes that people make with grammar. Okay, and the first one is that you must make sure that every sentence you write has a verb. It sounds very easy and it sounds very logical, but many times people write sentences with no verb. Look at this. Here we have a sentence: with minor issues to seek local clinics or family doctors. This sentence has no meaning because it has no verb. So here you can see the correct sentence. When patients have minor issues, they should seek local clinics or family doctors. So you can see now the sentence makes sense. It has meaning because we've got verbs. All right, so every sentence that you write, you must make sure you have a verb. Okay, all right, number two, the second thing that you must be very careful about is you must make sure that every verb you use has a correct tense. You know, when you're writing in Chinese, verbs have no tenses. So you don't need to focus on verbs when you are writing Chinese. But in English, you've really got to focus on the verb in every sentence. So you must make sure that every verb has a correct tense. Let's look at an example of a mistake. Here we can see, for example, many years ago, I have a friend who is a doctor. This sentence is wrong because the verb is not in the correct tense. Here's the correct example. For example, many years ago, I had a friend who was a doctor. And here we need to use past simple tense in the sentence because we've got the words many years ago. And many years ago means past time, 过去的意思，对不对? Okay, so please remember to make sure that every verb you use has the correct tense. Okay, number three, also about verbs. You must make sure that every verb has a subject. This is one of the interesting differences between Chinese and English. In Chinese, verbs don't need subjects. You can just use a verb with no subject. But in English, you must make sure that every verb has a subject. If the verb has no subject, then in English, we don't know who is doing the action. Okay, so here's an example of a mistake. Look, for this reason should be increased. So we've got a verb, we've got should, and we've got a tense, okay, but there's no subject. So the correct example should be, for this reason, salaries should be increased. And now we know what the sentence is about. The sentence is about salaries. And I'm sure you will agree, salaries are very important, so we don't want to leave them out of the sentence, do we? Okay, next, number four. You must make sure that you use plural nouns for general things. You will remember that I've talked to each of you about the importance of general information and specific information. And I'm sure you'll remember that I've told you many times that if you want to write about general information, you must use plural nouns. Plural nouns means noun with a S, 加 S, 对不对? Here's an example. Look, doctor is badly paid. Now, when I see this sentence, doctor is badly paid, I will immediately think, which doctor? So that's not general, 对不对? Now, here's the correct sentence. Doctors are badly paid. And when I see this sentence, because there is a S, I know that you mean all doctors in general, not just one specific doctor. So please remember to use plural nouns to write about general things. Okay? Now we're going to move on and we're going to have a look at some common mistakes that people make with vocabulary. So let's move on to number 5. And there are several common mistakes that people make with vocabulary. First, people very often choose the wrong word. Some words are pretty similar to other words, and it's very easy to get confused between words which sound the same or words which look the same or words which might have a very similar meaning. Let's look at an example. Here you can see a wrong example. Taiwanese people have also immersed themselves in this craze. Now, when I read this sentence, I don't know what this means because immerse is the wrong word. So here's the correct word. Taiwanese people have also immersed themselves in this craze. So we can see the word immerse and emerge. So what's the difference? Well, emerge means coming out. And immerse is the opposite. Immerse means going in to something in more detail. And I'm sure you can see from the sentence that immerse is the best word here because the sentence means that we are going into this craze or this trend in more detail. But emerge and immerse, they sound very similar, so it's very easy to get confused. So, tip number 5, make sure you use the correct word when you're choosing vocabulary in your writing. Okay? Now another common mistake that people make with vocabulary, number 6 on our checklist, is that they use the right word, but they use the wrong part of speech. What does part of speech mean? Part of speech means a noun or a verb or an adjective or an adverb. And you must make sure that you use the correct part of speech. In Chinese, this is very easy. There are no problems here. But in English, the difference between a noun and a verb is very, very strong difference, very big difference. And also the difference between an adjective or a noun is very important. So how do you know if a verb is a noun, if a word is a noun or a verb or an adjective? Well, you have to focus on the end of the word. Let's look at an example. Here you can see sentence number 6, technological will help us with these issues. Now, technological is the right word, but it's the wrong part of speech because it's an adjective and it doesn't make any sense. So we need to change this adjective to the noun. Technology will help us with these issues. And you can see that the end of the word, the adjective is I-C-A-L and the noun is Y, right? Technology. So when you're choosing vocabulary, always remember you have to think about what part of speech do you need. Do you need a noun, an adjective, a verb, or an adverb? Okay? Alright, number 7. We're going to move on now to look at some punctuation. And punctuation is, well, it's quite important. It's not very important, but it's quite important because punctuation is different in Chinese and English. So let's have a look at a wrong example first. Now, if you look at this sentence, you can see all of these yellow spaces. Let me just check. And you can see the yellow spaces, right? And the yellow squares are the spaces that you press when you're writing. And you can see that, as you know, in Chinese, when you add a comma, you will have a space, comma, space. So you will have 2 spaces on either side of the punctuation, in Chinese. Okay, let's have a look at the correct sentence. And you can see here that the punctuation, this is English punctuation here, there is no space in front of the comma. Can you see the difference? There's only one yellow space, one yellow box, right? So that's the first thing. When you're writing, also if you're writing by hand, put the comma or the full stop, put that right up against the last word. Also, another problem with punctuation is capital letters, 大写. And you can see in the first sentence, 这里有大写，对不对? Okay? Now, capital letter in English has a very specific meaning. Okay? First, as you know, we use capital letters at the beginning of each sentence. That's the first use of capital letters. There is a second use, and the second use, we use capital letters to show that this word is a name. A person's name, or a country name, or a company name, any kind of proper name. And you can see here, we is not somebody's name. So you must not use a capital letter. So when you're writing, be very, very careful about your capital letters and your punctuation. This is very small little details, but you know, these lots of little small details, this has a very, very big impact on your overall writing. Okay? All right, let's just review the whole list again very quickly to help you remember when you go into the exam. First, number 1, make sure every sentence has a verb. Then number 2, make sure every verb is in the correct tense. Then number 3, make sure that every verb has a subject so that we know what the sentence is about. Okay? Number 4, make sure you use plural nouns to write about general things. And in your essay, most of the things you're writing about will be general, so remember to add S to your general nouns. Number 5, make sure you use the vocabulary correctly, use the correct word. And number 6, make sure you use the correct part of speech, noun, verb, adjective, or adverb. And finally, number 7, please make sure that you use English punctuation and not Chinese punctuation. Okay? And if you remember this checklist when you are doing the test or just before you begin, then I'm sure this will help you with your writing. Okay guys, that's it for today, and please remember to bring your umbrella, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.